a lot of this residue on the finish. And then you have to call the finisher, and he's got to come out and get it off. You can't do it yourself. It's just too complex an issue. But you know, it's got to be washed down with a solvent and redone. So, you know, re-rubbed out. So, you know, I think at this point, if you have questions, I know there's going to be a lot of questions. We'll just take some time and answer those. I had a few as we go along. Is there anything? Yeah, we'll start.
A piano tuner sold me a container of this Corey product. Did you know any?
Oh yeah, okay. Corey, I'm glad you mentioned that. Polyester. You can go over if you got a polyester high gloss, you can go over it with the Viva towels damp to get the dirt off of it. And then the best thing I've found to use is this spray polish. It's made by Corey. And you can get this online. There's Jansen Piano Stool Company sells Corey, and a lot of the piano supply houses. You put this on like, you do it the same way you would put Windex on your windows. And you just, this is only for high gloss. And you spray it and then wipe it off. And it'll brighten it right up. You don't want to put too much on. Once you get it wiped down, it's, One thing I should mention is that whenever you're spraying a piano, and Frank, you'll back me up on this. You want to make sure that you don't spray the strings. You don't want to get anything on the strings. So if you're doing like what I was doing right here, you might want to put a cloth or something down on your strings before you spray it.
Also, don't touch the bass strings with your fingers.
But Corey's great stuff, and Corey also has a line of polishes for satin, and it's the same idea. It's you spray it on and wipe it off. You always want to go, when you've got a satin rub like this piano here, you want to go in the direction of the rubbing. It's important. You don't want to circle it or like I did with that one. You want to make sure you always wipe with the direction. If you look at this, you'll see the little lines where it was rubbed out. So you always want to follow the lines. Thanks for that question.
So,
yes?
How many times do you use that spray?
What's
like
that?
Once a day or once a month?
What's that?
How often do you use the Corey?
Oh, the Corys? I wouldn't use it any more than once every 3 months.
Once every 3 months?
Yeah. Because it will. In fact, we used to supply a bottle of this. In fact, Yamaha made their own. I shouldn't talk about Yamaha in here. I'm sorry. But they put their own label on this, and everybody got a bottle of this when they got a piano, and they stopped doing it because people were doing it like once a day, and if you do that with this stuff, you end up with a film on there that you can't get rid of, and you got to call a piano finisher. You know. Now, Steinway has got a line of polishes as well, and they've got one specifically for the satin rub finish, and they've got a high gloss polish. So that would be. How many Steinway owners are there in here? Okay, good. That's about half. So what kind of piano do you have? Do you?
I think I got a Steinway too.
You have a Steinway? Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
So I have a question on the high gloss.
Okay.
Plastic finish.
Sure.
And again, two things. First of all, when you're using the Corey, for example, on large surfaces like piano wood, round, long strokes? How, is there any, does that make any difference at all?
I usually just make, on a high gloss finish, you don't have to worry about the grain of the rub marks. So I just, I kind of just go in a big long swirl.
Okay, and
Yeah.
second of all, just normal dust that gets there, what do you recommend to take that off? Just,
Well-
just the one that you might do once a week or something?
Oh yeah, for a regular,
How would you do that?
well,
Protect
you could use a dust cloth, a microfiber dust cloth, which I've got one out in the truck. But they're usually yellow and in color, come in a package, and you can wash them. But they're great for dusting because they pick up all the particles without a lot of work. But you got to wash them once in a while because they get like I've got 3 or 4 of them in there, and they're only good for a few jobs, and then you got to wash them again. And the other thing you can do is use end dust on the cloth. Spray it on the cloth, and it gives it a static charge. You don't want to spray it on the piano ever, but you can spray it on the cloth, and that, let it dry on there, and it'll give it a little static charge. Now, most of the manufacturers also give you a dusting mitt when you buy a new polyester piano, and that's usually treated with a product like end dust, and you can wash those too. I mean, they're good for a few dustings, and then put it in the washing
Where do you
machine.
get end dust? I've heard of the product, but I don't know that I've ever
It's
seen it.
a spray that you
Yeah, I know, but
use.
where would you?
You can get it in most supermarkets.
Safeway.
Yeah,
Safeway?
it's a common.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Steinway makes a separate cleaner and polish. Is there any instructions for how to use that? How often you use the cleaner versus the polish, or whether you do?
I wouldn't use, my recommendation is the maximum is every 3 months for any polish or cleaner.
Okay.
Unless you have a special occasion where you spilled something on but that would be the maximum for routine cleaning. Yeah.
What does the cleaner do?
I'm not sure
Yeah, okay.
what's in their cleaner,
Right.
I mean, as far as chemically, but,
And it's safe to use their polish on, I have a glossy lacquer finish. It's an old mahogany Steinway,
uh-huh,
about 60 years old.
okay, yeah. This stuff, the Corey polish works
Uh-huh.
great on the gloss.
It
Yeah,
does. Uh-huh.
it works great. And it's minimal. I mean, you can get into it and wax them and use the finish feeders, but if there's nothing wrong with the finish,
Mhm.
a coat of Corey's every 3 months, it'll be great. And also on the older ones, they're gloss, but they are rubbed. They're hand rubbed. So always go with the grain.
Right.
Always. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
But how do you clean the dust out of the inside of the piano on the strings?
Under the strings?
Well, dust collects, if you leave the piano open. So how?
Well, you can vacuum all the stuff off the top, and then when you get it tuned, you can ask the tuner to dust under the strings.
So you use a small.
And
vacuum?
in fact, Frank,
Well,
if you got, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm actually with Steinway tuning, I'm a technician for the store. And there are some tools that I have that you can get underneath the
Right.
strings, but it's very difficult to do.
Mhm.
So it is recommended. What I do is, I don't recommend cleaning the inside of the piano very often. Usually when you have a tune, have the tuner go through
Right.
and clean it. And do not touch the dampers. It's like if for some reason you just feel compelled to dust those dampers, dust them in the direction that they go with the strings. Don't ever go across them sideways, and dust them with absolutely almost no pressure. If you start putting pressure, there's a little wire that goes up into the piano. If they bend in any direction whatsoever, you've got a problem. The piano won't dampen correctly, and you'll have ringing notes when you stop. So inside of the piano is definitely a tuner's job. And then
Right.
if you do the harp, you want to do it with a non-abrasive, and you don't want to use any liquid at all inside the piano. So very important.
Yeah, it's really important. You don't want to get anything in there. Yes, Justin?
What about the stories of people who say just use Windex on the outside of your piano if it's shiny, or just dilute Windex?
Well, you know, Windex works great for cleaning. I mean, it works good on windows. It'll clean a polyester piano pretty good. It'll also, if you get Windex on the strings on the inside, you've ruined the strings. It's got ammonia in it. It's quite often I've gone out and seen pianos that where they use Windex on it, and there's like a coating of, I don't know what it is. It's like white stuff. It's a milky stuff, and it's probably the chemical reaction with whatever was on there. And the only way you can get it off is to clean it down with naphtha, which you don't. I don't want to tell you to clean your piano with naphtha. Let me do it, because it's pretty specialized, and you can hurt yourself with naphtha. It's you want to make sure you've got good ventilation. But Windex is I think it probably works okay if you've got a spot with its, a real dirty spot, or you've spilled some ice cream or something like that. It'll clean it up, but you don't want to make sure that it doesn't get anywhere on the inside of the piano, and then go over it with Corey's afterwards, because there's no lubricant in Windex. There's just ammonia and that sort of thing. It's a good cleaner.
Just on the high gloss is what you're talking about, for the Corys?
Yeah.
And then on the satin, you wouldn't want to use...
Well, Steinway has got a cream polish that works pretty good, pretty nice on the satin. But that's like once a year. Yeah.
Well, I heard that if you dilute down Windex in water, you can use that on the keys. Because I know people like to keep clean keys.
Right. It really cleans the dirt off
Right.
well.
You wouldn't want to use straight Windex on the keys.
No.
No. What about ivory keys?
What's that?
Ivory keys? Is there anything special to use on ivory keys to clean them?
I would recommend on ivory, use Dawn. If they're dirty,
Yeah, right.
use Dawn with water. Which Dawn is a very mild soap, dishwashing soap.
Could you use that on plastic too? Would that be just...
Yeah, you can use it on plastic, but for ivory, I wouldn't use anything stronger than Dawn to clean them. And you would mix it, put a couple of drops in a couple of water, and that's all you need with something like that.
What about vinegar and water for ivory keys? That was what my...
Vinegar and water?
Vinegar.
Well, I suppose the vinegar would clean the grease, but I wouldn't recommend using vinegar because it on ivory, because ivories are really very delicate. Ivory is actually transparent, and there's a white wafer that's put down on the wood of the key, and then the ivory is laminated onto that wafer, and that's what makes it white. Because otherwise, ivory is not really white; it's transparent, and that's put on with a water-based material. So you don't want to get them too wet, because they'll live. They're very delicate, so you want to keep it to a minimum cleaning the keys. I'm sure you'll back me up on that one.
Yeah, ivories are...
And I'm just, vinegar is great because it'll